adventure that's 3 dimensions away from Beetlejuice being called Beetlejuice Returns. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Beetlejuice, released in 2024. Beetlejuice is the sequel to Beetlejuice, released in 1986 or 88? I want to say 88. And this time around is once again directed by Tim Burton and is written by Al Gruff and Miles Miller and Seth Grahame-Smith from a story by Alfred Gruff and Miles Miller. And the movie once again stars Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara, and this time is joined by Jenny Ortega, Justin Thorax, Monica Bellucci, Willem Dafoe, and Danny DeVito. The movie is essentially a sequel to Beetlejuice, which came out in the 80s. And the movie this time around is about Winona Ryder basically hosts a supernatural talk show called Ghost House. And what happens is she keeps seeing flat Beetlejuice everywhere and dead people, essentially kind of like Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. And so, of course, what happens is whenever Beetlejuice gets into, her, she starts seeing everywhere, and then, of course, after the death of her father, she comes back to the house that started it all. And then, of course, once supernatural chaos ensures, as a dead boy takes her daughter to the other world, and she has to summon Beetlejuice again. The movie is a sequel, and I really like that it's a legacy sequel. I am iffy about certain legacy sequels because, there's not been a lot of good legacy sequels. I mean, Hocus Pocus 2, for example, is not a very good legacy sequel. But then, movies like Top Gun Maverick just exceed expectations. And I think sometimes it's really great when you have legacy sequels because they're sometimes really good when they have new ideas. But then you get really bad legacy sequels like, Anchorman 2 or Top Gun Maverick. Not Top Gun Maverick, I mean like Anchorman 2 or, of course, like Hocus Pocus 2 or Zoolander 2, which is, ugh. But then there's sometimes you get really good legacy sequels like Top Gun Maverick. And, and I think that's what's really cool about legacy sequels is sometimes, especially when you have the same creative team, they can tell really good stories. I mean, I really love this movie. I remember sitting down and watching this movie because I loved the original Beetlejuice as a kid growing up. I was a huge Beetlejuice fan. So whenever I was just sitting there waiting to watch this movie and it came on, and the second you hear you start hearing a new rendition of the Beetlejuice theme from Danny Elfman, but then you start hearing the familiar parts of the theme, you're like, oh yeah, and then it's playing like it's the same where it's like the model going up the street and everything, and you're like, oh yeah, here we go. And then of course once the movie starts, I thought, well, oh yeah, I'm really into this. And the movie really is. It does the comedic tones, but also has some really great questions it raises about the afterlife. I will say the movie does feel like it leans too much into the afterlife. Like the first one was just about these couple, Adam and Barbara. And we didn't really go into the paranormal world until like an hour in, compared to this movie where it's like the first 10 minutes of the movie we're in the, they're in the afterlife. And I feel like the biggest thing that people keep complaining about is, and I had some issues with this movie as well, is that the movie has too much going on for it. I will say I do think some parts of the movie, have so much. Like, there are, like, Monica Bellucci, who basically plays Beetlejuice's wife, who is essentially a cult, a witch, who basically a death cult leader, who needs Beetlejuice's soul, so that way, and so Beetlejuice basically, the whole movie is trying to run away from her. And so I like this idea of it, I like the idea that she is after Beetlejuice. And, I will say, the one thing that I was talking with a friend of mine is that I like the fact that this movie, everybody has a purpose in this movie. And obviously, Beetlejuice, the whole reason why he needs Lydia, the reason why he needs, everything in this movie, is because he has someone after him. And obviously he really wants Lydia. And then you have, Winona Ryder's daughter, who is played by Jenny Ortega, Astrid, who basically, the whole movie she wants to do is, she basically blames her mom, for her parents being separated, and she kind of resents her mother, and she feels like her mom's just exploiting, people's mental illness, and doesn't realize she's telling the truth till later on in the movie. And I like the idea is that they kind of because of her dad, their divorce and him dying, she kind of resents her for that, and it kind of like the idea that it kind of they separated, but then, it's really like a new kind of idea, especially with Beetlejuice, okay? Beetlejuice just wants to get married. He still wants to do the same thing he did in the first movie, get married to Lydia. And I'm kind of glad, because I was worried, okay, is he going to try to marry the Astrid Like, that's gonna be creepier, But instead, this now he's like, he wants to still Winona Ryder. He wants Winona Ryder, and I do kind of feel like there are things I really like in this movie, like Wolf Jackson. I love Wolf Jackson in this movie. Wolf Jackson is hilarious. Willem Dafoe as Wolf Jackson is great. Like, he's just basically an actor that died on set, and he's so committed to that bit of being a cop that he will not let that go. And I think that is so funny. Of him, he's like, literally, there's a scene every time he has to have his secretary bring him coffee. Never drinks it because that's what cops do, hold coffee. And then on top of it, like, he's like giving a speech to these other cops, and his secretary has cue cards like for the script. It's so great. And then, he's so great in this movie. And then, of course, there is there's a lot of great moments, like whenever they have the Soul Train, and then you have and then they have Rory, who is basically played by Justin Thorax, who is Winona Ryder's boyfriend, who wants to get married to her because he's a gold digger. And I like the idea that he's a gold digger. And yeah, Beetlejuice basically, doesn't really. I like that he doesn't try to throw him out of the picture, but he basically is just like, he's like, oh, he'll destroy himself. I don't have to do nothing, and I like that idea of this. And because most movies they'd be like, oh, I got to take him out of the picture first. And I also like the fact that there's a scene in the trailer where he's like, you're a figment of my imagination. He goes, really? Is this a figment of your imagination? And, he scares him and it faints. Like, that is early in the movie, and it's actually really works really well. And Beetlejuice really, especially, there are times in the movie I did not like where he just disappears. Like, oh, I gotta go take a leak, and then leaves. I'm like, why would you leave her? Because but then I understand because Michael Keaton has said in interviews, I did not want a bunch of screen time. So when Michael Keaton felt like, okay, Beetlejuice just sticking around would be annoying, so he just, so they figure out ways to him to, oh, I gotta take a leak. So he disappears from the script for a little bit. And then, you find him later, and he's like, oh, I had to go look for Lydia, just stuff like that. And sometimes, people could say, oh, Beetlejuice was annoying, and, I don't think he was annoying in this movie. I think he was just in there the right amount. I do really like him in this movie, especially when Bob is his co-worker, who basically is, his best friend, and then basically gets Bob to dress up like him, and he's like, instead of coming after me, she'll come after you, and basically he gets all and then they basically blows a hole through his work office to bring Lydia through the afterlife, and then of course that's when the other shrunken heads leave, and Bob still stays there. It's really great and everything. And on top of that, you have Wolf Jackson, which is literally after Beetlejuice. Then Danny DeVito is like a janitor that's and they just drinks chemicals. And I really enjoyed that aspect. There's a lot of humor. Obviously, Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis are not in this movie because their story has been told. So that's why Tim Burton didn't really put them in the movie. Also, they'd have to de-age them, and it's what makes sense for them to be older, and so And so I also the church sequence at the end, because there is no day, they have Deo, which is sung if you watch the first trailer, that is literally the only Deo you'll hear, because at the funeral for Jeffrey Jones' character, Lydia's dad, Charles Dietz, they play the song Deo, Deo, in the church, and that's it, which is actually a nice homage, because what happened is Otho, who died in real life in the 90s, at his funeral they played that song. I think that's paying a homage to when Otho died in real life, and which I thought was neat. And then of course they don't play the jump in the line at the end. I was expecting Winona Ryder's daughter and her to do jump in the line, but instead they don't do that. Instead it's let's say her at all in the movie at all. Instead it's they do have it, and they don't have the Calypso song, the Deo, as a montage dance sequence. Instead it's just sung at the funeral. And instead this movie only has they have a new MacArthur Park song by Richard Harris. Is sung there's a dance number in the church where they're basically dancing, where they're bringing out a cake and everything, and everybody's dancing MacArthur Park, and everybody's trying to Wolf Jackson and the Dead Cops are busted in the church National Lampoon Christmas Vacation style, and then Beatles freeze, and they'll freeze. It's so great, and it really was. I thought I enjoyed that sequence, the church sequence, so much. And then, of course, the sandworm comes out, Beetlejuice's wife, and he's like, I'm smarter, and he's smarter now, and he just lets it eat Rory and her, which is great and everything. And also, I really enjoyed, Beetlejuice. Yeah, I didn't like the ending, though. I thought the ending was felt like they were setting up for a third film, because literally, they go to, they've been wanting to go to Transylvania, to Dracula's castle. Then she meets a guy, gets married, and then she has a kid. Then it turns out it's just a baby. It's just Beetlejuice baby, because Beetlejuice has a baby in the movie. It's a nod to Beetlejuice fantasy thing that happened earlier in the film, and basically, that happens in the movie and everything. And I was like, I just hated it set up for a third film. And I understand it's trying to that Beetlejuice would never stop pursuing Lydia, but I did like this movie. I thought Danny Elfman's score throughout the movie was fantastic. I thought the practical effects, that you could tell that they were there, and it wasn't just feel like a CGI movie. There are moments where there are CGI and you could tell, but then most of the movie is either like practical effects. And there was that I did not like the claymation how Jeffrey Jones died, because I think when I first saw that, I'm like, is this how? Oh my God, really? Is this what we're gonna go to? Is it just gonna be like stuff like this? Because I'm not into that. If it's just claymation and stuff, if this is gonna be like breaking fourth wall kind of thing, where it's gonna be more of a campy movie, I understand it should be campy, but not like overly campy. And so, but whenever once we got past that sequence, I honestly liked this movie a lot better. Like, I thought this movie was really good. I still think the first movie's better, but I enjoyed this movie a lot to where I would watch this again, and I can't wait to own this on 4K. If I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it a solid B+. Thank you so much.
Coming to this special occasion, but right now with like a little privacy.